particular lecture, we will be dealing with environmental sociology from Western perspectives. Now, environmental sociology is basically a kind of interaction between the society and the environment. Now, it not only focuses on the kind of interaction, but also the kind of dependence between the environment and the sociological happening. And as a result of which, this kind of dependence is actually leading to a lot of interaction, to a lot of emphasis on the kind of changes which are happening in the environment. And because of this fact that so much of dependence is there between the human and the society, a lot of things needs to be focused upon. Earlier, there was the concept that humans are not dependent upon the environment. But with the advent of society, with the advent of the kind of interactions which are happening, there are more facts which focus on the fact that humans are more and more dependent upon their biophysical environment. Biophysical, what does it really mean? So basically, the biophysical environment is a kind of environment where the interactions happens between the biotic and the abiotic factors. The biotic factors refers to the all kinds of living organisms, and the abiotic factors refers to the all kinds of non-living factors like air, water, soil, and the biotic factors includes microorganisms, human beings, plants, animals. So this kind of interaction which is happening between both the biotic and the abiotic is basically what we refer to as the biophysical environment. And with the facts, the more and more the facts which are coming up, it is more provident of the fact that human beings are highly dependent upon the biophysical environment. Now, as per the Western objectives or the Western perspectives, there was a lot of interpretation. Earlier, where they believed that human beings are not at all a part of the biophysical environment, they are not dependent upon it. But of course, then there were perspectives had changed, perspectives had altered, and because of which the facts established that humans are very much a part of the environment. Now, coming to the fact that this environmental sociology is basically a relatively new inquiry, an area of a different kind of inquiry which is happening. And the first and the foremost thing which happens is basically the kind of recognition of the seriousness of the environmental problems. And as a result of which, the recognition of the seriousness of the environmental problems basically refers more and more awareness about the environmental problems. And after the recognition and after the seriousness of the environmental problems, there was this in kind of environmental sociology. The concept was unique earlier, where the focus was strongly discouraged. Discouraged in what? Discouraged in giving attention to non-social conditions such as environmental equality. Now, consequently, the growth of sociological work on environmental issues has been accompanied by a critique and reassessment of core of sociological assumptions and practices, with the result that environmental sociology has somewhat ambivalent stance towards its parent discipline. So this environmental sociology not only focuses on the problems, not only reassess them, but also tries to solve them in a more ambivalent manner. Now, for the organizational recognition of environmental sociology, they were being basically classified into three types. The first one being the Rural Sociological Society, which was being formed in the year 1964. And after its formation, it resulted in a more determined way the formation of another fact of it or another part of it, which is referred to as the Sociological Aspects of Forest Research Committee, where they give more emphasis on the kind of research, on the kind of problems, and emphasis is given upon their solutions. Now, in the year 1972, the Society for the Study of Social Problems, which is referred to as SSSP, added an environmental problems division. Now, whatever environmental problems were there were being directly addressed to this particular unit. And thirdly, in the year 1974, the Council of American Sociological Association appointed the ad hoc committee on environmental sociology, and in this particular committee there was a section only on environmental sociology that was again formed in the year 1976, and the section exists to represent all the interests pursued by environmental sociologists. So, environmental sociology basically has certain scopes of research. The first one being identifying the societal causes of environmental problems. The second one being understanding the importance or the impacts of these problems upon the environment. Then, understanding the response of these problems upon of the people on the society. And finally, learning the social processes that could help advance environmental sustainability. Now, there are various causes of the societal problems, but the correct recognition of the problem, the correct identification of the problem is something really very important. Keeping that in mind, how the problems are actually having an impact upon the society is something to be dealt with. And also with the fact that after this impact, how the society is responding to the problems, how they are reacting to it, whether it is positive, whether it is negative, what kind of impact they are actually having upon them, how they are trying to deal with it is something of very high importance. And keeping in mind the sustainable nature of the environment, if these issues can be addressed with the kind of environmental stance that needs to be highlighted as well. So, the first question from the part that we had or discussed just now is the study of environmental interaction is referred to as, and the four options are given over here, like environmental science, environmental sociology, ecology, and social ecology. Yes, you're right. The answer is environmental sociology. Now, after this, we will be dealing with basically the Western perspectives. Now, what is actually a Western perspective? Westernization does not only mean the difference in terms of its geographical location, but also a spatial concept with cultural meanings. Now, a theory can be referred to as a westernized theory, or a sociological theory can be referred to as a westernized one, keeping in mind three basic factors. The first factor is that if a sociologist who is settled in the West but designs his or her own theory without keeping in mind the Western objectives, but the language in which they are addressing is actually the Western culture. So if that is the situation, then it can be considered as a Western objective or a Western sociological perspective. The second one is a sociologist who works in the West, lives in the West, and is also willing to construct his or her sociological theory, keeping in mind the guidelines of the Western culture or of the Western nation, but expresses it in a non-Western language, like it can be in Chinese or any other Western language or non-Western language. So keeping that in mind, then it can also be referred to as a Western logical theory. Also, in the third situation, a non-Western sociologist who is not staying in the Western area but designs his or her theory as per the guidelines of the Western world and also expresses it in a Western language is referred to as a Western theory. So, keeping these factors in mind, whereby depending upon the place where the sociologist lives, whether it's a Western world or the non-Western world, depending upon the language in which he or she is addressing his sociological theory, is how the this kind of geographical concept or this kind of theory is being actually designed. Now, one of the major or the prime impacts of the Western perspective of environmental sociology is anthropocentrism. What is exactly anthropocentrism? Anthropocentrism is basically the fact which deals with the basic views that human is superior than anyone in the world. Human is of the prime focus. It is actually not dependent on anyone in the world. And at the same time, the environment also does not have any such impact upon the environment, upon the human beings. Now, keeping that in mind, because of this growth of anthropocentrism that was a huge part of the Western perspective of environmental sociology, the scientific knowledge and technology converted basically anthropocentrism into modern arrogance. Now, followed by this, there was European expansion of the New World, which had profound cultural impact, and at the same time, the land use pattern changed. Opportunities seemed to be endless. And keeping that in mind, what happened was Industrial Revolution, followed by advent of modern technology. And with this, the concept that was going parallel was making or feeling that humans are superior of all and are not at all a part of the biophysical environment. Neither they are dependent upon it, nor in any way they are a part of it. Now, in the industrial world's techno-culture, there was a paradigm shift that transcended national identity and political ideology. A dominant social paradigm was shared by industrial nations. There was completely an industrial era paradigm and with more predominant Western world views. Now, the factors that shaped the dominant Western worldviews included changes in where and how people lived. There was massive shift towards industrialism and urbanization from agriculture, and created a belief that modern societies are moving away from the biophysical environment. So the fundamental beliefs of this dominant Western worldviews are people are fundamentally different from each other, they are not dependent upon each other, and they have their own domination. Secondly, people are masters of their destiny. They have their own goals and they know how to choose their goals and how to obtain them. The third view of, or the third belief of this dominant Western world is that the world is vast and thus provides unlimited opportunities for humans, and the history of humanity is of a progressive nature. For every problem, there is a solution, and thus progress never ceases. So, keeping in mind these four factors, the ones being that humans are basically different from one another, they have their own destiny and thus can achieve their goals the way they like. The world is vast and so they have unlimited opportunities. And the fourth one being that the history of humanity is of progressive nature. And so even if there are problems, there are solutions which the humans can definitely achieve. Now, in this Western perspective, there were two major people who had actually shaped it up. One of them was William R. Catton Jr. and his scholar Riley E. Dunlap. There is a particular line which I would like to say that was being written by Riley E. Dunlap, where he wrote that I always describe Overshoot as a superb ecological history of Homo sapiens, an analysis of our evolution into what Bill called Homo colossus, yielding a profound understanding of our current ecological dilemma. Now, Caton basically had written this book, Overshoot, and in that he had very lucidly explained the kind of problems which are there in the environment and how human beings are not considered as a part of it. He was basically of the opinion that when the world was being laid down, when the fossil fuels were just being formed and the human beings were evolving, they actually did not know how to use those fossil fuels, how to go about utilizing the environment. But with the advent of technology, with the advent of the modern culture, human beings have now been turned or have become referred to as basically the Homo colossus, where the species bloomed, and now we must expect a crash in the environment, because once the human beings evolved, once they bloomed in the environment, they started misutilizing the environmental sources, and as a result of fact, the crash is very much that was expected. So, as per the content that was being learned so far, there is another quiz. The Handbook of Environmental Sociology is written by Riley Dunlap, Giddin, Murphy, and Ulrich Beck. Yes, you're right. The answer to this particular question is Riley Dunlap. The next part to this particular presentation actually deals with another concept of this Western perspective, basically the HEP and the NEP. So HEP stands for Human Exemptionalism Paradigm. Now, what is this actually HEP, or what is Human Exemptionalism Paradigm? As also I stated before, that HEP basically refers to the fact that humans are exempted from, or it is believed that humans are exempted from the nature. In the fact that humans, although they might be interdependent upon each other, but not dependent upon the nature. And this particular view not only emphasized the dominance of the humans upon the environment, but also the fact that they did not consider environment to be a crucial part of the nature at that particular time. So, ideology that physical environment is irrelevant to the study of society was also one of the prime factors that had shaped up the Western perspectives. And HEP should be replaced by NEP. The NEP basically stands for the New Ecological Paradigm. This concept that NEP should overcome the flaws which HEP had was actually put in by Caton and Dunlap. Now, according to Caton and Dunlap, humans are an exceptional species, but they are not exempted from the biophysical influences. So there was definitely a call to reform HEP with NEP. Now, there was call to reform this particular concept in sociology and to accept the biophysical world as a subject of social study and explanatory variable, and to replace the anthropocentric and dominating view of HEP, and at the same point integrate environmental concern into sociology. So, as per Dunlap and Caton, basically the interactions between society and nature are three-facet. First, cognitive, because it focuses on the fact that how people think about nature. Secondly, behavioral, where they act in relation to nature. And third, physiological, the actual influences of the physical effects of the relationship with nature. Now, as per this dominant Western worldview and HEP had certain basic differences. So, as per the first concept of the assumption of nature of human beings, people, as I had already earlier mentioned, that people are fundamentally different from all the creatures, but as per HEP, humans have a cultural heritage in addition to genetic inheritance. Then the second assumption of dominant Western worldview goes that people are masters of their own destiny. They have their own goals and can choose accordingly. And as per HEP, it goes by the fact that social and cultural factors are the major determinants of human affairs. The third assumption of dominant Western worldview was that the world is vast and thus provides unlimited opportunities for humans. But in case of HEP, social and cultural environments are the crucial contexts of human affairs and the biophysical environment is largely negligible. The fourth assumption for the dominant Western worldview was the history of humanity is of the progressive nature, so whatever problems will be there, it will have constrained solutions for that. But in case of HEP, culture is cumulative and thus technological process can continue indefinitely, making all the social problems ultimately soluble. On the contrary, when these dominant Western worldviews were being compared with that of the new ecological paradigm or NEP, it was being found that under the new ecological paradigm, the first assumption was that while humans have exceptional characteristics, they remain one of the species that belong to the environment and are highly interdependent upon each other. The second assumption was that human affairs are influenced not only by the social and the cultural factors, but also by intricate linkages of cause and effect and feedback in the web of nature. Thus, purposive human actions have many unintended consequences. The third assumption was humans live in and are dependent upon a finite biophysical environment which imposes potential physical and biological restraints on the human affairs. And finally, although the inventiveness of humans and powers derived therefore may seem for a while to extend carrying capacity limits, ecological laws cannot be repealed. So, upon studying the HEP and NEP, it was being seen that NEP was something which was more progressive and absolutely in contradiction to that of HEP. And for the fact that in case of NEP, they had said that human beings are very much a part of the biophysical environment. They are dependent upon each other, and whatever be the advent of the technology that happens, environmental laws cannot be repealed. And that is what Dunlop and Caton had done. They had focused more and more upon this NEP. So from this Western perspective, there was a huge shift from the concept that human beings are superior to the concept that human beings are there in the environment, but environment is very much a part of the society, and there is a strong interdependence between the human and the environment. So keeping that in mind, there were certain contemporary issues also of the 21st century, like there's global warming, there are consumption of fossil fuels, there is environmental inequality or environmental injustice. Of course, along with the environmentalists, along with the biologists, there are sociologists also. So here I would like to conclude this presentation by saying that although human beings who were earlier thought to be supreme are very much supreme, but at the same time they are very much an intricate part of the environment. They are dependent upon the environment, and at the same time the environment is what they are surrounded by. So whatever laws, with whatever technology, whatever kind of advent has happened, it is a kind of a mutual interaction, a mutual interconnection which happens within the humans and the environment. So neither can it be neglected or nor can it be set aside. So keeping that in mind, there's another quiz for you all. Which of the following theoretical perspectives hold that human beings are the central or most significant entities in the world? The four options are biocentricism, anthropocentrism, creationism, and totalitarianism. Yes, you're right. The answer to this particular question is anthropocentrism. Thank you.